Hi guys, Aaron here and welcome to a workshop. Today I'll be working on this very nice 3T Exploro adventure bike, and the big upgrade here is going to be transferring from a double Durace 9000 group set to a mix of Shimano 1x electronic components. So I think this is a setup that suits the bike like this much more, and I'll be keen to find out how that will work out and how will it look in the end. I think it's a pretty cool upgrade. So without further ado, let's just start working on it. Okay, the 3T build or upgrade is now ready, and although it seemed like quite a straightforward job, it definitely wasn't. There were multiple issues and some quite severe ones that I've experienced. So I'm pretty sure this is a very nice bike to ride, but working on it, or at least in this particular case setting up with Di2, is a bit of a nightmare. So I want to talk you through that in a bit. So the first and biggest problem I had encountered was this little cable port here. So a normal auto cable is quite stiff and a bit flexible, so it was quite easy to push through because it goes in here and then all the way here, and it exits up at this port. So it's a full length auto cable. But the problem is that for some kind of manufacturing defect, the actual port itself was, or the diameter of it was too small to even be able to plug a Di2 connector in there. But you obviously need that because you need the wire coming from here to the bottom bracket and to the junction box, which is located somewhere here. So that's a big issue. And another thing that made it even harder is there was well, I don't know what this is. This was in the drive side chainstay. I guess it's leftover from manufacturing, and it was making my life harder because it was just tangled up in there, and when I tried to route the cable, or sorry, the wire, it just didn't work. And if I looked into the frame, there was also one on this side, so yeah, no idea what that is. But anyway, I wanted to use my Park Tool internal routing kit, but unfortunately that doesn't fit through here either. So yeah, that's caused major issues, and in the end I eventually had to simply take a file and widen this opening so the Di2 cable port actually fits in there. And yeah, it took me more than an hour and a half to actually get this thing through. I didn't want to file away too much. It would require even more filing to be able to route it properly with the Park Tool wiring kit, but I just went with a piece of regular wire, steel wire, and routed it using that. Yeah, it took me a long time. It was very frustrating, and yeah, it definitely shouldn't be like this. It's just a manufacturing flaw in this sense. So that was one problem. Then there are other niggles as well which held me up. First, if you're here, there's this bar tape wrapped on the chainstay to prevent chain slap. Obviously it's not going to be a huge problem with 1x, but yeah, it was wrapped all the way here, and since the 1x ring is offset, it goes further inboard and it just wouldn't rotate, so I had to take this off completely and then put it further back so it doesn't interfere with the chainring. So that's another job that I had to do. Then, as for the regular bar tape on the bars, I had to throw that away because it was this Data self-adhesive tape and it stuck on so much that actually it's kind of disintegrated when I wanted to remove that. Then I spent half an hour just cleaning the glue off the bar because I didn't want to leave it messy. Then other problems as well with the Di2 conversion. So I thought that there are many builds on the internet of this frame set built up with Di2, so I thought, well, it should be nicely compatible and ready for it. Well, no, not really. You don't have any place to hold the battery. At first I thought that the seat post might be just large enough to fit in there, but it just isn't. There are around 2 millimeters in diameter missing to do that, so yeah. Also, when removing the seat post, I had to turn the frame upside down because there's this very strange wedge design that's all the way, internal from here, and if you don't and you just pull the seat post like this, then this can fall into the frame, which is a nightmare. Also, there's you have this kinked profile underneath the bottom bracket, which is kind of a design feature of this frame. Well, that's a nightmare as well because it's asymmetric and very sculpted, and it just doesn't fit in any way on my Park Tool stand, in any way that I can either have the bike on there stable or be able to rotate the cranks. So yeah, it has to have this design in order to have the compatibility, but it's just annoying. What I really like though is the format of the bottom bracket itself. It's a BB386 Evo, it's a nice huge shell, has big bearings, compatible with long spindles, small diameter spindles, large diameter spindles, compatible with pretty much everything, so that's very nice. It also has ceramic speed bearings in there, which fit nicely, no problems with there. One niggle I have is that for some reason there are some stiffening braces within the bottom bracket itself, molded into the carbon, and for that reason you have to actually pull the BB out completely in order to do anything with cables. So yeah, that helped me up as well on other frames. Some other frames you have an opening or something where you can just play around with the wires around it and the junction box. With this one you can't, so you have to remove the bottom bracket. Yeah, another thing, I was talking about the battery. Well, the only way to locate the battery is just wrap it in a piece of foam and throw it in the frame. You can't put it in the seat tube because this area is closed up. you should be able to put it through the bottom bracket opening and into the down tube. There's just a very narrow window in there, so it's kind of messy, but the battery is too long to be able to take this corner, so it's just impossible. So in the end I had to remove the fork as well, the headset, and just basically throw it in from this opening down to the down tube, which again was problematic because this opening isn't too much or too large either, so I couldn't wrap it in foam, and also it got stuck somewhere around here when there's some kind of resin thing in there left over. So eventually I managed to shake the battery down here, and in a series of cumbersome finger twisting operations and the help from a friend, I managed to plug it in and wrap it in a piece of foam so at least it doesn't rattle too much. I think it is going to rattle a bit, unfortunately, but honestly I tried, but there's nothing really I could do about that, although it's pretty good. So yeah, all the wires plugged in. The only simple wire to route was this top one that comes from the junction box to the upper junction box. But that had some problems as well because, well, the wire came from a different bike, namely this one, which is, well, it's a 49. This is a size small, so no big difference in size, but the geometry is different, and the routing is different. So this wire was a bit too short for this build, and I didn't have a 1000mm wire. This was an 800, so I had to be a bit clever about it. You can see this little port here. This is for the mechanical version. The owner bought this bike, I think, second hand, so we don't have the Di2 version of this port. And this front opening is normally run or used to have as a cable stop for the front Mac. And yeah, only the inner wire goes through it. So I had to drill it out to be able to fit the Di2 wire through. I wanted to use this front one because that obviously needs a shorter cable. So I've done that and used this little 4 years junction box holder underneath the stem. Also the stem spacers, I had to change those because there were some glossy 3K ones I have here, but obviously the 4 years I had to change one for a smaller one. So I changed those so they look nice and even, so there's the same design. That's a small detail, but I like paying attention to those. I also wanted to shrink wrap these two together, but that again wasn't really possible, and the reason for that is the calipers are exactly the same on the mechanical and the Di2 version, and I didn't want to mess with the brake hoses either because they were the perfect length, so I only changed the levers. The problem with that again comes from 3T and its bars, is because, well, I can't really show you now, but at the junction of a hydraulic route and the one that goes into the lever, let me just show you on this one. Yeah, you have this little head here that screws into the lever. Well, this is too large to put through the opening on the 3T bars, which is far too narrow because they're internally routed. And yeah, in order to pull the cable or the brake hose out to put shrink wrap on it, I would have to basically cut this pull it out, shrink wrap it, pull it back, put a new olive on, put a new this retention screw on. So yeah, in the end I just used kind of a wrap on here. Because of the narrow opening on the 3T bars, it was also quite difficult to pull the Di2 wire through it, because there's hardly any space left over with the brake hoses still installed. So yeah, that's kind of inconvenient, but at least I was able to do that with the Park Tool wiring kit. Then bleeding the brakes, that was pretty straightforward. It all worked. At one point the bike stopped shifting, which caused a little heart attack, but actually it was only the battery going flat. But in the end I managed to keep everything working, which is kind of nice. And yeah, the bike works perfectly. One other issue I had was with the cassette. So this is a mountain bike 11-speed cassette, and these are the same, actually the same total width on the cassette body as a 10-speed road cassette. For some reason, I don't know why they don't have it the same width as on SRAM cassettes, but anyway, normally this isn't a problem because most derailleurs have a very wide adjustment range, so you can just compensate because the cassette sets a bit further inboard. With this one I had to use a spacer because the Di2 Mac just wouldn't move far enough to go into the biggest cog. So yeah, I had to disassemble the cassette again to make it work, but now it works flawlessly and it shifts very, very nicely and crisply. The levers are programmed as the E-tap levers would work. So both of these buttons pull the derailleur outboard, and both of these buttons push the derailleur inboard. So that's how it works. I think this is a good setup for off-road riding. Then what else? Yeah, so gravel bikes really are a thing now, and many people like to question their appearance or their popularity. Do we really need gravel bikes? Well, for me it's a definitive yes. I really can see the point from the places that I've been riding on my slightly modified cross bike. They just work and they're a ton of fun on places where going on a mountain bike would be boring. But I have one particular thing about gravel bikes, you know. I think they only make sense if they are significantly lighter and significantly more aero than a hardtail mountain bike. And that's where I come to this 3T. You can see that it has pretty good kit, like decent wheels, one bike group set carbon bars, Durace crankset even. You know, nothing is really low budget or just a heavy part. But still, I've measured this bike. It's just a small size small, mind you, and comes in at 9.35 kilos with pedals, right, as you can see it. At a computer that you have 9.4 kilos, and that's a big problem, I think. You know, when I look at my full-on, full suspension, cross-country race bike, front and rear suspension, huge cassette range, 12-speed, bigger brakes, burly tires. This bike weighs 10 kilos, right? So that bike weighs 9.4. You see what my problem is here? At this point, I can't see the point of the gravel bike because, well, just why, you know? It only makes sense to me if it's aero. This one probably is, unless you use these tires and wheels. They're not even tubeless, so that's another problem. Of course, if you fit it something like the MV 4.5 ARs that I've been using for a mixture and riding, then would be fine, much lighter, but I don't know, in this form and shape, and after the horrible installation of the group set, I don't think, yeah, this bike definitely hasn't won me over. I'm sure it's nice to ride. If you read the reviews, they're very positive, and I get that. The owner also kindly told me that I can try it if I want, but it's a size small, and that's not a problem, but the problem is that the reach from the saddle to the bars is more than 10 centimeters shorter than what I ride, so yeah, I just left it at that. So anyway, this was my experience with the 3T Exploro. It turned out to be pretty nice, and yeah, nice looking bike, although definitely I'm not looking forward to building up another one, unless it's E-tap, then I'm all good with that. So anyway, if you want to know more about high-end bikes like this one, then don't forget to tune into the channel and subscribe. It's all for today. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.